things are not calming down across college campuses right now. And as a part of that, we've seen a new wave of arrests as school and government officials seek to stop student encampments like we saw at Columbia, with one of the biggest new protests being yesterday at UT Austin, where we saw more than 500 students walk out of class in support of Palestine. And just like at every other protest of this nature, one of the biggest things that they wanted was for the school to divest from companies working with Israel or Israeli firms. Now with this, campus police were quick to try to confront the group and they tried to open negotiations, but reportedly that failed within half an hour, with one officer telling a student that he'd be the first to go. And he made good on that promise, with that student being the first to be arrested. That was then followed up by police getting backup from state troopers and more students getting handcuffed and facing criminal trespassing charges and police forming a line to push them back. They then regrouped at another part of the campus, and once again, there was a confrontation with police where protesters were forced off the lawn that they were trying to occupy. And in the end, at least 34 people were arrested, 2 of which were members of the media. You know, a big thing here is that UT Austin, that's just a single example of how much schools have been cracking down on students. We saw the same thing happen at USC here in LA, with things there continuing well into the night, and we saw nearly 100 people arrested. And the list kind of just goes on and on. Out in Boston, police spent the night tearing down a pro-Palestine encampment at Emerson College, arresting more than 100 people, with police claiming that no protesters were injured at Emerson, but 4 officers were, including one seriously. But notably, footage from the event puts that into doubt because police were not messing around. Right, so for many, it's hard to believe that no one but officers were injured. And you know, as always, there's been a wide range of reactions to all this, with one of the most viral examples being Hassan Piker on Piers Morgan. Because while speaking about the protests, he had this to say when asked if these protests were just performative.
Absolutely not. I don't think that, I mean, all protests are technically performative, obviously, but there's a very clear-cut goal. That is why they're trying to very clearly cause a little bit of a disruption and engage in.
But are you comfortable? Okay, but are you comfortable,
the most American thing you can do?
Are you comfortable with the ones who are seen chanting support for Hamas or chanting about Intifada?
I am perfectly comfortable with people chanting about the Intifada. As far as the Hamas thing goes, any kind of protest is always going to have a litany of random people, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. You have to look at the actual tangible goals that the protest movement is stating they're interested in. And I think that those goals, and I think you will agree with me on this, Piers, I think those goals are pretty valid overall. I think that they want to, 1, recenter the attention to the genocide that is ongoing in Gaza, and 2, demand that their tuition dollars do not go to operations in Israel.
However, notably with that, Hassan wasn't particularly happy about that interview, with him talking about it later on stream and how it quickly devolved into an argument about Israel and the war as a whole, rather than what he thought he was there to do, talk about the protests. Right? And kind of after that bit, it kind of just turns into a yelling match. So a lot of that also ended up being the really viral clips because people love slams and clapbacks. But also, to zoom in a bit, over at USC, tensions have been high for a while now, especially after that valedictorian controversy that we covered last week. And while there are many students who are passionately supporting Palestine and want the war to end, you have many Jewish students saying that these situations are veering in a direction that's making them feel unsafe. And at UT Austin, President Jay Hartzell justified yesterday's events, saying, "The protesters tried to deliver on their stated intent to occupy campus. People not affiliated with UT joined them, and many ignored university officials' continual pleas for restraint and to immediately disperse. The university did what we said we would do in the face of prohibited actions." With it also believed that UT Austin's strong response was influenced by an executive order Governor Greg Abbott issued earlier this month, or with it requiring that schools change their free speech policies to punish, quote, "the sharp rise in anti-Semitic speech and acts on university campuses." And Abbott, who authorized state troopers to be deployed to combat the protesters, said on Twitter, "Anti-Semitism will not be tolerated in Texas, period. Students joining in hate-filled anti-Semitic protests at any public college or university in Texas should be expelled." Also, regarding his anti-Semitism claims, Abbott and many others painted this protest as anti-Semitic because it was organized by the Palestine Solidarity Committee. However, you had many saying at the protest itself, there seemed to be no blatant anti-Semitism like we saw at parts of the Columbia protest. Also, another twist to all this is that the demand that UT Austin divest from companies arming Israel is probably not possible under a 2017 Texas law, although notably that law has been challenged many times and continuously narrows in scope. But all of this is there were a lot of people critical of the police and state's actions, such as how armed the police were when they first confronted protesters despite demonstrations being completely peaceful up to that point. We also saw criticism over how the university presented the demonstration, with officials claiming the tough response was needed because the protesters threatened to cancel classes yesterday. But in that Instagram post from Tuesday, the Palestine Solidarity Committee also had details that they encouraged students to walk out of class, not that they were going to forcibly shut down the school. We also saw a lot of faculty members at UT Austin coming out to condemn the school's response, saying, "We faculty at UT Austin condemn President Jay Hartzell and other administrative leaders' decision to invite city police as well as state troopers from across the state to our campus today in response to a planned peaceful event by our students," right, with then many of these schools having more planned protests for today.